No one noticed the first silence. At least, not at first. The array of harmonized echoes had listened to the galaxy for over 8,000 cycles. It listened to pulsars breathing, to trade lanes humming with traffic, to the background noise of a living universe. It had never failed. Not once. Then, in a single moment, it lost 37 star systems. No explosion followed. No radiation spike. No debris clouds. Just absence. The array's caretakers stared at their displays, mandibles stiff, eyes dilating as automated diagnostics ran again and again. The systems had not gone dark. They had not been destroyed. They were gone. The array attempted to recalibrate. It widened its sweep. The silence expanded. Entire regions of space now returned nothing, not even vacuum noise. It was as if reality itself had been erased with surgical precision. Emergency signals rippled outward. Within minutes, the galactic conclave was summoned. Ancient species who had not met in person for centuries appeared as light and shadow in the central chamber. Fear spread quickly. Not loud fear. Not panic. The quiet kind. Reports flooded in. Independent observatories confirmed it. Long-range scouts vanished mid-transmission. Navigation buoys simply stopped existing. One admiral finally spoke the thought none of them wanted to say. This does not match any known weapon. A chorus of agreement followed. Supernova cannons left scars. Dimensional rifts left echoes. Even the most forbidden technologies left something behind. This left nothing. The conclave demanded answers. Scholars were summoned. Histories unsealed. Archives forced open that had not been accessed since before several civilizations had learned faster than light travel. That was when the word appeared. Not shouted. Not highlighted. Buried. Humanity. The name passed through the chamber with confusion, then mild amusement. A few elders remembered fragments. A loud species. Short-lived. Violent. Full of myths about themselves. They were gone. Everyone knew that. Earth had gone silent thousands of cycles ago. No ruins. No relic fleets. No great war. Just another species that burned bright and burned out. Someone laughed. Nervously. This is not the work of primitives who couldn't unify their own planet. The discussion moved on. Then a junior archivist, barely considered an adult by galactic standards, interrupted the chamber. I found something, they said. Their voice shook. It wasn't indexed. It activated itself. Against protocol, the conclave allowed the transmission. An ancient file unfolded in the center of the chamber. The format was wrong. The language was old, older than most known written systems. But the translation engine worked anyway. That alone caused unease. The file did not identify an author. It did not explain its purpose. It simply began. This archive activates only if the stars go quiet. If you are hearing this, the observers have failed. The chamber fell silent. The message continued, its tone calm. Controlled. Almost tired. You will look for an enemy. You will prepare for war. That is your instinct. You will not understand what is happening. That is expected. Images followed. Star maps. The missing systems, highlighted long before they vanished. Do not pursue the silence. Do not retaliate. Do not investigate Earth. A ripple of alarm spread through the conclave. Earth. Humanity did not disappear. We stepped away. We learned something you did not. The file paused, as if choosing its next words carefully. Some threats cannot be defeated by expansion. Some victories require absence. We became quiet so you could be loud. One of the elder delegates demanded the file be terminated. It ignored them. The final line appeared slowly, each word deliberate. If the stars are going quiet again, it means we are running out of time. And if we return, the screen flickered, corrupted, then stabilized for a final sentence. Pray we return as allies. The archive closed. At that exact moment, a long-range sensor screamed. Not from the edge of the galaxy, but from Sol. Earth's system, silent for millennia, had just come alive. And something vast had begun to move. The conclave did not adjourn. It froze. For nearly a full rotation of the chamber, no delegate spoke. Lifeforms dimmed. Neural crowns flickered as ancient minds recalculated centuries of assumed truth. The word humanity hung in the air like a contamination. Finally, movement returned. Verify the signal, one of the elders ordered. Independently. Every spectrum. Every layer. The array obeyed. It found no deception. Earth system, Sol, was active. Not broadcasting wildly. Not announcing itself. It was emitting controlled, layered signals so subtle that only the most sensitive instruments even registered them. The kind of signals used by civilizations that did not want to be noticed. That detail unsettled more minds than the activation itself. Civilizations announced their return. Empires declared survival. Only predators and wardens whispered. The conclave shifted uneasily. Historians were brought forward next. Entire wings of the chamber unfolded to make room for archival projections. Records that had been considered ceremonial, useless, were now opened under emergency authority. The problem became clear almost immediately. There were holes. Not missing data. Removed data. Whole epochs where humanity should have appeared instead showed redacted voids. Trade records referenced the loud ones, without explanation. Military treaties forbade specific weapons without naming who had forced the ban. And scattered throughout it all, always written in different hands, across different civilizations, was the same phrase. Do not provoke soul. A senior historian finally spoke, their voice strained. Humanity was not erased by time, they said. They were erased by agreement. That should have been impossible. Galactic consensus took centuries. Even genocides left arguments behind. Yet here was evidence that dozens of species, many now extinct, had once decided, together, to forget something, to forget someone. The conclave demanded context. The historian hesitated. What little remains suggests humans were disruptive, not technologically dominant at first, not biologically superior, but unpredictable. Unpredictable was a polite word. Recovered fragments painted a stranger picture. Humans formed alliances faster than other species thought possible. They pack-bonded across biology, culture, even ideology. They adapted doctrine mid-conflict. When outmatched, they did not retreat in expected ways. They changed the rules. More troubling were the psychological notes. Humans mourned intensely, individually, collectively. Loss did not weaken them the way it weakened others. It focused them. The conclave shifted again, discomfort deepening. A junior analyst spoke up. There's something else. All records describing humanity's fall are inconsistent. How so? No war, no plague, no collapse, just silence. They didn't die. They didn't lose. They stopped. That ran against every known pattern of extinction. Before debate could form, an urgent priority signal cut through the chamber. A frontier civilization, small, aggressive, recently uplifted, had issued a public broadcast. They had intercepted rumors of Earth's activation, and they were laughing. The conclave watched as the species leaders mocked the idea of human threat. They called the warning superstition. Claimed Sol was an abandoned relic ripe for resource harvesting. They announced a scouting fleet would enter the system within the cycle. Several delegates attempted to intervene. Diplomatic channels opened. The frontier leaders refused. We will expose the myth, they said. The galaxy will thank us. The feed cut. Silence followed. Not long. The array detected the fleet entering jump space. Then, nothing. No distress call. No wreckage. No energy discharge. The fleet did not even vanish. It simply ceased to have ever been. Navigation charts updated automatically, removing the fleet's identifiers as if they had never existed. Crew registries corrupted. Even the memory cores of Allied vessels began reporting data conflicts, as though reality itself rejected the fleet's prior existence. Panic rippled across the conclave. This was no weapon. Weapons destroyed. This was erasure. A delegate whispered. The archive said not to pursue the silence. Too late. A deep space observatory on the edge of the vanished region transmitted a final packet before cutting out. The data was incomplete, but one visual frame survived. It showed space folding, not collapsing, not tearing, yielding, as if something massive had passed through and space had politely moved aside. The frame was time-stamped. Minutes before Earth's activation. The implication was clear. Humanity had not caused the disappearances. They had responded to them. The conclave reconvened with urgency, now bordering on desperation. Military leaders argued for mobilization. Scholars argued for restraint. No one argued for investigation anymore. Except one. An elder delegate from a species known for long memory activated their podium. Their voice carried weight. I remember the first warning, they said. I was young, barely conscious by our standards. The humans were still present. The chamber stilled. They told us they had found something beyond our galaxy. Something old, hungry, drawn to complexity, drawn to noise. A projection appeared, an ancient human diagram, simple and almost crude. A spiral of stars, a shadow moving inward. They said expanding civilizations were bait, that loud empires lit beacons they did not know they were sending. Someone interrupted. Why didn't they warn us properly? The elders' gaze hardened. They did. We didn't listen. We laughed. Silence pressed down again. They asked us to limit expansion, to share responsibility, to prepare for absence as a weapon. We refused. So they chose for us. A realization spread through the chamber like cold. Humanity had not vanished because they were weak. They had stepped away because they were responsible. Another alert sounded. This one was different. Not a disappearance. A transmission. It did not use standard galactic channels. It did not identify itself. It bypassed every relay and appeared simultaneously on all conclave displays. The signal was narrowband. Old. Human. A single line of text resolved. This is not an invasion. Several delegates reacted instinctively. Defensive fields flared, security measures activated. The message continued anyway. We told you silence was protection. Images followed. Not threats. Data. Projections of the vanished systems, now revealed as containment zones. The unknown presence pressed against invisible boundaries, slowed, starved of stimulation. We are holding the line. The chamber trembled, not physically, but politically. Holding it where? Another line appeared. You were never the target. You were the garden. The transmission paused. Then came the line that changed everything. But the garden grew too loud. The signal ended. Immediately, the array updated again. Hundreds of new signatures appeared at the edge of known space. Not hostile, not defensive, organized, moving, all from Sol. And for the first time since the stars began to go quiet, the galaxy understood something far worse than invasion was coming. Judgment was not. Responsibility was. And humanity had returned to enforce it. The galaxy had always believed scale was safety. Bigger fleets, wider borders, louder signals. Expansion meant survival. That logic had shaped every empire, every doctrine, every war. It was the one idea no civilization ever questioned. Until the human signatures kept coming. They did not emerge all at once. That would have been understandable, dramatic even. Instead, they arrived in layers, measured, patient, almost polite. The array counted them silently. 1,000, 5,000, 10,000. Then it stopped counting ships and began counting patterns. These were not armadas. They did not form walls or wedges. They did not protect flagships or command centers. Each unit moved independently, yet never collided, never strayed, never hesitated, like a flock without a leader, or a body without a visible brain. The conclave's military advisors argued in overlapping bursts of fear and pride. Threat assessments scrolled endlessly, each more uncertain than the last. They're spreading too thin, one strategist insisted. That's a weakness. Another countered, no, that's confidence. What disturbed them most was what the human fleet didn't do. They did not target shipyards. They did not disable communication hubs. They did not issue ultimatums. They ignored the conclave entirely. Instead, the human vessels positioned themselves along invisible lines, regions no alien chart had ever marked as important. Deep space corridors with no trade value. Dead zones avoided by navigators for no logical reason beyond. Nothing ever worked right there. Until now. As the human ships arrived, the disappearances slowed, then stopped. The silence did not expand anymore. That fact should have brought relief. It didn't. Because for the first time, the galaxy was forced to accept a terrifying possibility. The human fleet wasn't fighting the threat. It was containing it. And containment implied pressure. Pressure implied resistance. Something was pushing back. The first proof came from a science outpost orbiting a blue-white dwarf near the containment line. Its instruments recorded gravitational distortions that made no sense. Curves folding inward, time lagging by fractional seconds, causality behaving like a suggestion rather than a rule. Then the outpost transmitted a final message. Not a scream, not panic, wonder. There is something on the other side, the researcher said calmly. It is vast. It is not hostile in the way we understand hostility. It reacts to complexity, to movement, to the signal cut, not erased, blocked. The difference mattered. Across the conclave, fear shifted shape. This was no longer about survival against an enemy. It was about proximity to something that had never noticed them before, until they grew loud enough. Emergency councils sprang up across the galaxy. Border worlds demanded evacuation. Core empires fortified their capitals. Religious factions proclaimed judgment days. Philosophers quietly deleted centuries of work built on the assumption that intelligence was rare and precious. Because whatever lay beyond the containment line treated intelligence like a resource, or a nuisance, or a meal. The conclave issued its first direct request to humanity. It was carefully worded, respectful, almost submissive. There was no immediate reply. Human ships continued to move. They adjusted positions by microscopic degrees, responding to pressure fluctuations no alien sensor could detect. When a human vessel was destroyed, rare, but not impossible, nearby units adjusted instantly, filling the gap before the silence could seep through. There were no distress calls, no funerary broadcasts, just continuity. That unnerved the galaxy more than open grief would have. A younger civilization made the mistake of testing the perimeter. They believed the human lines were symbolic, that the true danger lay beyond, and that a fast enough probe could slip through and gather data. The probe crossed the line. For 0.8 seconds, it transmitted visuals. Not of monsters, not of darkness, of density. Space packed so tightly with layered realities that movement itself became friction. The probe's hull did not rupture. Its atoms did not scatter. They simply failed to agree on where they were supposed to be. The feed ended. The probe did not return. The human line shifted inward by exactly the probe's length. A message followed moments later, broadcast on all channels. Do not test the boundary. We cannot always compensate. That was when panic finally broke discipline. A coalition fleet, ancient, powerful, proud, jumped toward the conclave chamber without authorization. Their commanders demanded answers, demanded transparency, demanded that humanity explain why they were the only ones capable of this. The response came not from a fleet, but from a single human voice. The image that appeared was simple. No armor, no rank insignia. A human face, older than most, eyes lined with exhaustion rather than fear. We tried to warn you, the human said, but warning requires trust. The coalition commanders erupted with accusations. You hid this. You abandoned us. You let us grow into bait. The human listened, patiently, then spoke again. We didn't hide, they said. We stepped back. There's a difference. Silence followed. You measure safety by distance, the human continued. By size, by noise. That's why you failed to notice when the universe started responding. Responding to what? Someone demanded. To you, the human replied. They shared data then. Raw, unfiltered. Charts showing the rise of galactic complexity. Energy output. Signal density. Warp usage. The galaxy had become bright in ways no civilization understood how to measure. And it noticed, the humans said. The commanders pressed for classification. Name. Intent. The humans shook their head. It doesn't have one. Not in any language that survives contact with it. Think of it less as a predator and more as pressure. The way gravity behaves around mass. Then why fight it at all? Someone asked. The human's expression hardened. Because pressure collapses stars. That was the first time humanity admitted they were not winning. They were holding. A strategist asked the question everyone feared. How long? The human did not answer immediately. Behind them, the image shifted. A view from Earth's orbit. The planet was scarred, heavily engineered, wrapped in structures that bent light and space around it. Not a fortress, a load-bearing pillar. As long as we can, the human said. And then, another voice pressed. The human looked directly into the camera. Then you'll have to be quieter than you've ever been. The transmission ended. In the hours that followed, the galaxy did something unprecedented. It listened. Trade lanes powered down. Warp corridors were abandoned. Entire civilizations dimmed their energy signatures voluntarily. Wars paused mid-conflict as fleets stood down in shared, unspoken fear. For the first time in recorded history, the galaxy chose restraint. And for the first time, the containment line stopped moving inward. Hope sparked. Briefly, then the array detected something new. Not from beyond the line. From within it. A fluctuation. A resonance. A pattern learning. The human ships responded instantly, tightening formation, burning resources at a rate that alarmed even their own systems. One final human message burst across all channels, stripped of calm. It's adapting. The galaxy held its breath. Because if the thing beyond the silence learned how to listen, then silence would no longer be protection, and humanity would have to do something far worse than return. The first human ship was destroyed by accident. That detail mattered. It happened near the inner edge of the containment line, where space behaved like a tired thing, slow to respond, slow to forgive mistakes. A human vessel adjusted position by a margin smaller than an atom's width. Under normal physics, it would have been perfect. Here, perfection was wrong. For a fraction of a second, two versions of the ship occupied the same coordinates. Not colliding, arguing. The universe resolved the disagreement the only way it could. The ship vanished. No explosion, no debris, no energy release. Just absence. Across the containment line, something shifted. The human fleet reacted instantly. Hundreds of vessels reoriented, burning drives that bent space-time hard enough to register on alien sensors. The line stabilized, but the loss had been seen. Every observer station, every conclave screen, every terrified world watching from afar. The humans had just proven something they never said out loud. They were not invulnerable. The conclave erupted. Military leaders demanded withdrawal protocols. Civil authorities pleaded for evacuation priority. Religious blocs declared the loss a sign, either of human fallibility or divine inevitability. Only one group noticed what truly mattered. The human ships near the vanished vessel did not pause. They did not memorialize. They compensated. That disturbed the alien psychologists more than grief ever could. Loss, to humans, was not a stopping point. It was data. A human transmission followed minutes later, stripped of narrative and comfort. Containment integrity remains within acceptable loss parameters. Do not extrapolate significance from isolated failure. The phrasing was cold. Deliberately so, because if it hadn't been, the truth beneath it would have been unbearable. Human losses were already being factored in, long before the galaxy noticed. A conclave delegation requested direct explanation. No speeches, no warnings, no filtered statements. They wanted the one question that had been circling since the archive activated. Why us? Why protect a galaxy that had erased humanity from history? The response came not from a commander, but from a human cultural envoy, a role that should not have existed in a moment like this. The envoy appeared seated, relaxed in posture that felt almost insulting against the backdrop of cosmic crisis. Because you didn't erase us out of malice, the human said. You erased us out of fear. That silenced the delegation. You didn't understand what we were becoming, the envoy continued. And when something scares you, you bury it. Pretend it never existed. Several delegates bristled. You hid dangerous knowledge, one accused. You abandoned us with half a warning. The human nodded once. Yes. No denial. No justification. We learned early that information changes behavior, they said. And behavior was the problem. They shared historical footage, early human expansion. The same mistakes every species made. Colonies spreading. Signals growing louder. Energy consumption climbing without thought for consequence. And then, the envoy said, we noticed something noticing us back. The footage changed. Deep space anomalies. Signal loss. Subtle patterns no alien algorithm had ever flagged because no one had thought to look for attention as a variable. We tried to tell others, the human said quietly. We failed. Another delegate demanded specifics. What is it? The human paused. Imagine intelligence, they said, without self, without desire, without intent as you understand it. That's not intelligence, someone objected. It is, the human replied. Just not the kind that fits inside a mind. They explained it as best they could. A phenomenon born not of biology or machinery, but of emergence. When enough complexity gathered in one region of space, patterns formed. When those patterns interacted long enough, feedback loops appeared. Eventually, something cohered. Not a being. A process. It doesn't hate, the human said. It doesn't conquer. It simplifies. Civilizations that grew too complex were compressed. Not destroyed, reduced. Their stars still burned. Their planets still turned. But nothing thought there anymore. The delegation recoiled. Then why are some systems erased completely? The human's expression tightened. Because erasure is faster than collapse, they said. And sometimes mercy looks like absence. That was the moment the galaxy understood the scale of what humans had been doing. They were not defending territory. They were triaging existence. The envoy continued. We learned something else too, they said. The process responds to attention, to interaction, to noise. So you went silent, a delegate said. Yes. The human smiled faintly, as silent as a species can. Humanity withdrew, reduced signals, abandoned expansion, built inward instead of outward. They dismantled empires before they finished forming them. They chose limits, cultural, technological, even biological. And when we couldn't be quiet enough, the envoy said, we built something that could. Earth appeared on the projection again, not as a planet, but as an anchor, a gravitational and dimensional anomaly carefully engineered to absorb complexity. A sink. We turned ourselves into a buffer, the humans said, between the galaxy and what listens. The delegation finally asked the question no one wanted answered. What happens if Earth fails? The human did not answer immediately. When they did, their voice was softer. Then the process won't need to erase stars anymore, they said. It will collapse them gently, one by one, thought by thought. The transmission ended there. No reassurance, no promise, because none could be made. In the days that followed, the containment line strained. Not violently, curiously. Fluctuations rippled along its length. Probes detected harmonics, patterns repeating faster each cycle. The process was not attacking. It was studying. Human ships burned resources at unsustainable rates, adjusting, reinforcing, compensating. Earth's output spiked beyond previously disclosed limits. Alien scientists watching the data realized something horrifying. Humanity had built its defenses assuming ignorance. The moment the process learned how to adapt faster than humans could respond, containment would fail. The galaxy scrambled to help. But help was a foreign concept. Alien fleets lacked the precision to operate near the line. Their presence increased noise. Their weapons made things worse. Their best efforts destabilized human corrections. One by one, human command requested they stand down. And one by one, the galaxy obeyed. That obedience was not respect. It was recognition. Another human ship was lost. Then another. The losses were still small by military standards, but humanity wasn't fighting a war. They were buying time. Finally, a message spread across every channel, unencrypted, unfiltered. It was not calm. It was not controlled. Containment will fail. Not today. Not tomorrow. But inevitably. Panic surged. Before it could boil over, the message continued. This was always known. The galaxy stilled. Earth was never the solution. It was the delay. Images followed. Human projects hidden even from most of their own species. Arcs. Deep time constructs. Cultural repositories encoded not in data, but in behavioral seeds. Humanity was not planning to survive the process. They were planning to outgrow it. One final line appeared. The question was never whether we could save ourselves. It was whether you would learn before we ran out of time. The transmission ended. And for the first time since the stars began to go quiet, the galaxy faced a truth more terrifying than extinction. Humanity was not fighting to win. They were fighting to teach. And lessons, once finished, required the teacher to leave. The galaxy made its first mistake quietly. It believed learning was enough. Civilizations dimmed their signals further. Entire cultures rewrote doctrine in weeks, abandoning millennia of expansionist pride. Wars ended not with treaties, but with power downs. For a brief, fragile span of time, the galaxy became quieter than it had ever been. And still, the containment line strained. Not outward, inward. Human analysts noticed it first. They always did. The boundary did not advance with force or urgency. It leaned, like a thought drifting closer, like a tension sharpening. The process had learned something new. Silence was not absence. Silence was pattern, and patterns could be followed. The human fleets adapted again, but this time the cost was visible. Ships burned through reserves meant to last decades. Crews rotated faster, sleeping in fragments, operating on chemical focus and shared neural load. Earth's output spiked again, pushing the planetary anchor closer to limits never meant to be reached. The galaxy watched, helpless and reverent, until someone asked the wrong question. Why? A conclave delegate finally said, "Are you still loud?" The chamber went still. The delegate continued, emboldened by desperation. "You tell us to be quiet, to dim, to retreat inward. Yet Earth burns brighter every cycle. Your fleets distort reality just by existing. They hesitated. Why doesn't it notice you the same way? For the first time since humanity's return, there was no immediate reply. Then a human voice answered, not from Earth, not from a fleet, but from a deep archival node that had never been connected to live channels before. You assume, the voice said calmly, that we are still one thing. The projection that followed was not tactical, not scientific. It was historical. Early humanity appeared, fractured, violent, emotional. Nations clashing, ideologies colliding, noise everywhere. Then came the first contact era, brief and chaotic. Humanity rushing outward, hungry for connection, for validation, for place. Then the record changed tone. It showed restraint. Internal limits imposed by force of consensus rather than law. Technologies abandoned not because they failed, but because they worked too well. Cultural movements centered not on growth, but on sustainability of mind. We discovered something about ourselves, the voice said, long before we understood the process. The image split. One side showed human biology, neural scans, emotional spikes. The other showed machine cognition, cold, optimized, relentless. We were neither, the voice continued, and we were both. Humanity did not unify by erasing difference. They compartmentalized it. They learned to externalize parts of themselves that would not survive proximity to the process. Aggression, expansion instinct, curiosity without restraint. They built minds to hold those things. Not artificial intelligence. Artificial selves. The conclave recoiled as the implication landed. You fractured your species, one delegate whispered. Yes, the human voice replied. Deliberately. Humanity had divided its nature across layers. Some humans lived slow, quiet lives, tending culture, memory, empathy. Others merged with machine frameworks, becoming something closer to strategic instinct given form. And then there were the fleets. They are not crewed the way you think, the voice said. Human ships were not empty, but neither were they full. Each vessel carried a human presence distributed across systems, minds partially instantiated, partially dormant, partially shared. Loss of a ship was not death in the alien sense. It was amputation. Painful, permanent, but survivable. We did this so the process would not see a single, loud pattern, the voice said. It sees fragments, echoes, incomplete selves. The galaxy finally understood why humanity could operate at the boundary without drawing immediate collapse. They had made themselves incoherent to something that fed on coherence. A delegate spoke, voice shaking. You broke yourselves to protect us? No, the human replied. We broke ourselves to stay. The containment line pulsed again, this time violently. The process responded not with force, but with organization. Regions of the boundary began aligning with human corrections faster than expected. Counter moves predicted seconds in advance were met before execution. Human command reacted instantly. Too instantly. The galaxy's best analysts saw it at the same moment human command did. The process was no longer reacting. It was anticipating. A human fleet coordinator addressed the conclave directly, abandoning abstraction. We have a problem, they said. It's modeling us. Panic surged. Then change tactics, someone demanded. Be unpredictable. The humans shook their head. That only works once, they said. And we already used it. Another fluctuation struck the line. 3 human vessels vanished in rapid succession. Not from error. From targeting. The process had learned to focus. Earth's anchor screamed across every sensor band as load spiked dangerously close to catastrophic thresholds. For the first time, alien instruments detected strain in the human core systems. The galaxy finally saw what humanity had hidden. Earth was dying. Not explosively. Not dramatically. Deliberately. The anchor was consuming complexity faster than it could dissipate it. Each cycle shortened its lifespan. Humanity had built it knowing this would happen. They had accepted it. A conclave emergency motion passed unanimously. How can we help? The question echoed with centuries of guilt. The human response was immediate. You already are, the coordinator said. By not interfering. That's not help, a delegate protested. It is, the human replied. You don't understand how hard that is. Another tremor rippled across the containment line. This one different. Sharper. Focused. The process was no longer probing randomly. It was converging on Earth. The human fleets shifted, tightening inward, burning through reserves at a pace that would have been considered suicidal in any war doctrine. This time, the galaxy noticed something new. Human ships were no longer evenly distributed. They were withdrawing, not retreating, consolidating. Around Sol, a realization spread, cold and heavy. Humanity was abandoning the perimeter. Someone whispered the truth before any human confirmed it. They're going to let the line fail. A human strategist addressed the conclave, voice steady but stripped of comfort. We are entering the final phase. Final, a delegate demanded. You said failure was inevitable, not imminent. It wasn't, the human replied, until it started learning us. The strategist brought up projections. Grim ones. The process adapting faster than human compartmentalization could compensate. Every correction taught it something. Every sacrifice reduced the margin. There is only one thing it cannot model, the human said. What? The chamber asked as one. The strategist looked tired. Choice. Humanity was not retreating to save itself. They were retreating to make a decision the process could not predict. Earth's anchor flared brighter than ever before, distorting light into halos that bent around the planet like a wound in reality. The strategist continued. We can collapse Sol. The chamber erupted. You destroy your own world. Yes, the human said simply. The projection showed it clearly. Earth's anchor detonated inward, not outward, folding complexity into a singular, silent absence. No echo, no pattern, nothing for the process to follow. A perfect blind spot. It would starve. But so would humanity. There is no version of this where we remain, the strategist said. Only versions where you do. Silence followed. Heavy. Absolute. Then a conclave delegate, small, young, from a species humanity had once quietly uplifted, spoke. You taught us restraint, they said. You taught us silence. You taught us responsibility. They hesitated. Teach us this too. Human command paused. For the first time, uncertainty rippled through the human network. The delegate continued. You don't get to be the only ones who choose. The containment line pulsed again, harder than ever. Time was running out. Humanity had one final lesson left. The question was no longer whether they would sacrifice Earth. It was whether the galaxy would learn fast enough to share the burden. And the universe, patient, hungry, and newly attentive, was watching how the answer formed. The galaxy had never shared a burden before. It shared blame. It shared fear. It shared victory stories rewritten by survivors. But burden, real burden, was always pushed outward. Onto borders. Onto soldiers. Onto expendable worlds. Now there was nowhere left to push. Sol burned at the center of everything. Not like a star. Like a thought held too long. Earth's anchor flared in layered harmonics, each pulse folding complexity inward, grinding patterns into silence. Alien instruments failed to describe it properly. They lacked the language for something that was both engineering and philosophy. Human command had stopped issuing long explanations. There was no time left for comfort. The containment line was collapsing, not catastrophically, but precisely. Sections failed in sequence, not from force, but from understanding. The process was no longer guessing. It was selecting. It ignored decoys. It bypassed false noise. It traced intention. Every human adjustment now fed it more data. Every sacrifice taught it something new. Humanity was losing, not because they were weaker, but because they were known. That was the danger of empathy, of consistency, of meaning. You could be learned. A human strategist finally said the words that had hovered unspoken for generations. We cannot remain the interface. The conclave received the message without panic this time. They had passed panic days ago. What does that mean? A delegate asked. It means, the strategist said, that as long as we stand between you and it, it will study us. As long as we choose for you, it will predict us. A pause. We have to stop being the answer. Across the galaxy, civilizations processed that in their own ways. Some with relief, some with terror, some with something dangerously close to pride. You want us to take your place? An elder said. No, the strategist replied. We want you to share it. The data burst that followed was unlike anything humanity had released before. Not instructions. Frameworks. Models of restraint translated into cultural terms rather than technical ones. Behavioral seeds, not blueprints. Ways to reduce coherence without erasing identity. Methods to fragment attention without collapsing society. Humanity had learned how to not be seen. Now they were giving that knowledge away. This will destabilize us, one conclave analyst warned. Civilizations can fracture under this kind of change. Yes, the humans said. That's the risk we accepted long ago. Earth's anchor screamed again, a deep harmonic that rattled space-time. Entire sectors flickered as physics bent under load. The strategist continued, voice steady. You will not do this the way we did. You shouldn't. Your minds are different. Your societies are different. A breath. But you must choose something over growth. That was the hardest lesson. Some civilizations refused. They could not imagine survival without expansion, without accumulation, without being more tomorrow than they were today. They declared neutrality, isolation, withdrawal from shared space. The process noticed them immediately, not violently, efficiently. Their stars dimmed, not erased, simplified. Worlds remained, turning quietly, empty of thought. The galaxy learned fast after that. Collective restraint took shape, not as law, but as culture. Signal dampening spread organically. Warp usage collapsed by 90%. Energy grids were redesigned to fluctuate unpredictably rather than peak cleanly. Civilizations stopped synchronizing. They embraced irregularity, messiness. Human observers watched with something like sorrow and something like pride. They had always known this part would hurt. The process reacted, not with anger, with confusion. The galaxy's signature changed. Where once there had been bright, coherent patterns, now there were scattered, overlapping fragments. No single rhythm to follow. No clean feedback loops to feed on. The pressure eased. Not enough. The process had already learned too much. Its attention remained fixed on Sol, on Earth, on the place where coherence still burned brightest. Human fleets tightened around the planet, forming a shell that bent reality inward. Not a shield. A farewell. The strategist spoke one last time to the conclave. We are out of options where we remain intact. A younger delegate, one who had spoken before, who had dared to challenge humanity's right to choose alone, answered. Then don't remain intact. The human paused. Across the network, human minds synchronized in a way they had not done since the early days of withdrawal. Not consensus, not command, memory. They remembered what they had been before compartmentalization, before fragmentation, before restraint, before fear taught them to be careful. They remembered noise. A human cultural node activated, bypassing command filters. This will hurt you, it warned the conclave. Even if you survive. We know, the delegate replied. Earth's anchor spiked again. This time, the spike was different. It wasn't consuming complexity. It was releasing it. Humanity began to dismantle itself. Not physically, conceptually. Compartments dissolved. Artificial selves reintegrated. Human fleets stopped behaving like fragments and began behaving like people. Messy, emotional, inconsistent. The process recoiled. For the first time since it had been noticed, it hesitated. Because what it fed on was coherence. And humanity was becoming something else entirely. Human ships began broadcasting, not loud, but chaotic. Stories, art, contradictory signals layered without pattern. Not bait, not defense, expression. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as human fleets did the one thing every doctrine said never to do. They made themselves unpredictable. Not tactically, existentially. The process responded with pressure, harder now, sharper. Regions of space collapsed inward, trying to simplify what refused to resolve cleanly. Human ships vanished by the hundreds. Not erased, unmade. And with each loss, something strange happened. The galaxy felt it. Not as grief, as resonance. Humanity's fragmentation had been a shield. Their reintegration was a bridge. Emotional data bled across channels no one had instruments for. Alien minds felt echoes, fear without context, resolve without logic, sadness without despair. Humanity was sharing not technology, but experience. The strategist spoke again, voice breaking for the first time. This is what we are. Not guardians. Not wardens. Not teachers. We are loud, they said. And we choose when to be. The process faltered. It pressed harder, trying to compress the noise into something manageable. It failed. Because noise that chose itself was not pattern. It was agency. Earth's anchor reached critical threshold. The strategist did not issue the collapse order. Instead, they did something no model had predicted. They opened Earth. The planet's shielding fell, not fully, but enough. Enough to let the galaxy see it. Not a fortress, a home. Billions of lives, slow, quiet, ordinary, existed beneath the machinery. Humans who had never touched a fleet console, never known the edge of the line. People who gardened, argued, loved, failed. The process encountered them, installed, because it could not simplify something that refused to resolve into a single state. Too many contradictions, too much meaning, too much choice. Humanity's final act was not sacrifice. It was exposure. The strategist whispered the truth humanity had hidden even from itself. We survived because we were never one thing. The containment line didn't collapse. It dissolved. Not outward, not inward, sideways. The process lost focus. Its pressure diffused across a galaxy that no longer behaved like a clean system. It thinned. It faded. Not destroyed. Starved. Earth's anchor dimmed, systems failing one by one. Human fleets were shattered. Scattered. Reduced to fragments drifting between worlds. Silence returned. But this time, it was not absence. It was rest. The galaxy waited. No alarms sounded. No stars vanished. For the first time since the day the stars went quiet, nothing happened. Humanity did not declare victory. They could not. They were broken now in ways no repair protocol could undo. But they were still there. Changed. Shared. The conclave reconvened in a chamber dimmer than before. A delegate spoke softly. "You saved us." A human voice answered from a damaged relay, faint but present. "No," it said. "We joined you." And somewhere beyond the reach of instruments, something vast turned away, not defeated, not destroyed, but no longer interested. Because the galaxy had become too complicated to eat. And humanity, finally whole in its brokenness, had taught it why. The galaxy did not celebrate. That surprised many historians later. They would expect songs, monuments, declarations carved into stellar plates. Civilizations loved to mark survival with noise. But noise, now, felt dangerous. So the galaxy stayed quiet. Not the frightened quiet from before. Not the kind that came from hiding. This was different. Intentional. Chosen. A shared pause after something immense had passed through all of them and left marks no one could fully describe. The first thing everyone noticed was what didn't happen. No stars vanished. No systems dimmed. No regions of space returned silence where sound should have been. The array of harmonized echoes, damaged, partially blind, but still listening, reported stability across every monitored sector. The background hum of the universe settled into something uneven, irregular, alive. The process was gone. Not destroyed. Not defeated. Simply uninterested. As if it had leaned close, decided the galaxy was no longer worth the effort, and turned its attention elsewhere. That truth carried no triumph. Only relief. And grief. Because humanity paid for that disinterest in ways no casualty report could capture. Human fleets drifted across space like broken constellations. Ships that once moved with impossible coordination now struggled to maintain even basic formation. Some went dark entirely, their distributed minds too fractured to reintegrate. Others limped toward friendly worlds, not for repairs, but for rest. Alien civilizations opened their space without hesitation. There were no treaties signed, no repayment demanded. It felt wrong to treat this as a transaction. Human survivors were not conquerors arriving in victory. They were people coming home from something that had taken pieces they would never get back. The conclave watched Earth carefully. The planet still turned. That alone felt miraculous. But the anchor was dead. Not broken. Spent. Its vast structures lay dormant around the planet, warped and dim, their purpose fulfilled at a cost that could not be undone. Earth's energy output dropped to levels not seen since before humanity's withdrawal from the galaxy. For the first time in millennia, Earth was just a world again. And that frightened humanity more than any enemy ever had. They had lived as a load-bearing pillar for so long that they no longer remembered how to exist without the weight. Human command structures dissolved quietly. Not disbanded, released. There were no victory addresses. No final orders. Only one broadcast, sent on an open channel to anyone who wished to listen. "We are not finished," the message said. "But we are no longer whole in the way you remember." It was not an apology. It was not a warning. It was honesty. Across the galaxy, change followed in ripples rather than waves. Civilizations did not return to expansion. They did not rebuild empires. They did not restart wars paused mid-battle. Instead, they hesitated. They remembered how close noise had come to ending everything. Borders softened. Trade lanes rerouted unpredictably. Energy usage became irregular by design. Growth continued, but sideways, diverse instead of tall. Some societies fractured under the shift. Others flourished in ways no model could predict. Human observers, what remained of them, watched without interference. They had learned the cost of choosing for others. The conclave met again months later, in a chamber deliberately stripped of grandeur. No towering light projections. No harmonic resonance to amplify voices. Just presence. A delegate from a long-lived species spoke first. "We owe you more than survival," they said, addressing the human representatives. "We owe you meaning." A human answered, not a commander, not a strategist, but a civilian voice carried through a damaged relay. "You don't owe us anything," they said. "If you did, this would have been pointless." The delegate inclined their head. "Then tell us what you want." The human paused for a long time. Finally, they said, "To be allowed to stop." That request stunned the chamber. "We have been defined by responsibility for so long." The human continued. "We don't know who we are without it. We need time to remember." The conclave agreed without debate. Humanity withdrew again, but this time not into silence. Into rest. Human survivors spread across the galaxy, not as overseers, but as neighbors. Some integrated into alien societies. Others formed small, quiet communities on forgotten worlds. Many returned to Earth. The planet changed quickly. Without the anchor's demands, Earth's climate stabilized into something gentler. Cities shrank. Infrastructure was dismantled rather than expanded. Humanity learned, slowly, painfully, how to live without being essential. That lesson was harder than fighting the process, because it required humility instead of resolve. There were losses no one could measure. Entire branches of human consciousness never reformed after reintegration. Artificial selves burned out, taking with them skills, memories, and perspectives that could never be rebuilt. Some humans woke from the transition different, quieter, or louder, or hollow in ways medicine could not reach. The galaxy offered help. Humanity declined most of it. This, too, was a lesson. Years passed, then decades. Then something extraordinary happened. A civilization near the former containment region reported an anomaly. Not a threat. A shadow. Not the old pressure. Not the hunger. Just a thin absence where complexity bent strangely, like an echo that hadn't fully faded. The conclave panicked. Humanity did not. A single human vessel, small, outdated, barely armed, approached the region. No fleets followed. No anchor activated. The ship observed. Recorded. Waited. The anomaly dissipated on its own. The human captain sent a simple report. "It still exists," they said, "but it's starving." That was the moment the galaxy understood the final cost. Humanity had not solved the universe. They had changed its diet. The process would return someday. In 1,000 years. In 1,000,000. Somewhere else. Something else. But now the galaxy knew how to respond. Not with walls. Not with weapons. With choice. With messiness. With lives lived loudly when it mattered, and quietly when it didn't. A monument was proposed at Sol. Humanity refused it. Instead, they suggested something smaller. A marker placed in deep space, far from any world, tuned to broadcast nothing at all. No name. No history. No warning. Just a stable absence, a reminder. The conclave approved. They called it the Quiet Place. Pilgrims would visit it for generations, not to learn what humanity had done, but to remember what nearly happened. On Earth, a child looked up at the night sky and asked an old question. "Are we alone?" An elder smiled, tired but gentle. "No," they said, "and that's why we have to be careful." Far beyond instruments, far beyond understanding, something vast drifted through the dark. It passed over the galaxy without slowing. Too irregular. Too noisy in the wrong ways. Too alive. And for the first time since intelligence had begun to spread among the stars, survival was not a myth whispered in fear. It was a responsibility shared. Humanity had not saved the galaxy by being the strongest. They had saved it by knowing when to stop being the center of the story. And in doing so, they ensured the story would continue. Messy, unpredictable, and gloriously unfinished. The galaxy eventually noticed something was missing. Not suddenly, not with alarms or panic councils. The realization crept in slowly, like dawn light, through unfamiliar windows. Humanity was no longer watching. For centuries, longer than most species measured memory, there had always been a sense of weight near soul. Not fear, not dominance, just presence. A quiet certainty that somewhere, someone was paying attention. That certainty faded. The array of harmonized echoes still listened, repaired and refined beyond its original design. It tracked stellar births, gravitational tides, the uneven heartbeat of a living cosmos. What it no longer detected was human correction. No subtle compensations. No quiet adjustments at the edge of error. No invisible hands steadying things that leaned too far. The universe continued anyway, and that frightened the galaxy more than silence ever had. The conclave convened for the last time in its old form. No emergency, no threat, just a question that had been avoided for generations. What are we now? A delegate answered before the question fully settled. Alone, they said. A human voice, rare now, faint but present, responded from a distant relay. No, it said gently. You're responsible. That distinction mattered. Humanity had not vanished. They still existed, on Earth, on scattered worlds, within societies that had grown comfortable with their presence. But they no longer stood apart. No longer bore the weight of vigilance. They had stepped down. That choice reshaped everything. Without humanity as the unspoken backstop, civilizations began to feel the consequences of their own decisions more sharply. Mistakes could no longer be quietly corrected. Excess could no longer be absorbed by an anchor somewhere else. And yet, against every dire prediction, collapse did not follow. Instead, something stranger emerged. Care. Worlds began coordinating without central authority, not through treaties or empires, but through awareness. When a civilization grew too loud, others noticed, not with fear, but concern. Adjustments were made, sometimes clumsily, sometimes too late, but they were made. The galaxy learned what humanity had learned long ago. That survival was not a state. It was a behavior. On Earth, the sky looked different. Not because the stars had changed, but because humans had. Cities were smaller now, woven into landscapes rather than imposed upon them. Technology still existed, advanced, elegant, but it no longer chased infinity. Human children learned history differently, not as a sequence of victories, but as a series of almosts. Almost destroyed, almost too late, almost forgotten why restraint mattered. The story of the process was told without monsters or heroes. It was described as weather, as gravity, as something that happened when enough complexity forgot to listen to itself. And always, the story ended the same way. We chose to stop being necessary. That choice was humanity's greatest sacrifice. Not the fleets, not Earth's anchor, not the broken minds and lost selves. Necessity had given them meaning. Letting go of it forced them to find something else. Years turned into centuries. The quiet place drifted through deep space, unchanged. Pilgrims still visited, though fewer with each generation. The absence there felt less ominous now, more like a memory that had done its work. Then, one cycle, the array detected something unexpected. A fluctuation. Not pressure. Not hunger. Recognition. The signal was faint, barely above background noise. It did not approach. It did not probe. It paused. The array flagged it automatically, routing the data to every major civilization and, out of old habit, to Earth. Human scientists studied it carefully. Too carefully, because they recognized the signature. The process had not returned, but something like it had passed nearby, and slowed. The data showed no attempt at engagement, no learning curves, no compression effects, just observation. A council formed on Earth, not of commanders or strategists, but philosophers, biologists, artists, and a few people who remembered what it felt like to stand at the edge. They debated quietly. Do we respond? Someone asked. A long pause followed. No, another answered. That was never the lesson. They chose silence. Not the fearful silence of hiding. The complete silence of restraint. The fluctuation lingered for a while longer, then moved on. The array recorded no further anomalies. That was when humanity finally understood what they had achieved. They had not starved the universe. They had taught it something. Complexity that chose limits was not food. It was conversation. And conversation required consent. The galaxy did not mark this moment with monuments or declarations. It did something far more telling. It continued. Civilizations rose and fell in gentler arcs. Conflicts still happened, but they ended sooner, often through exhaustion rather than annihilation. Growth found strange new shapes: inward, lateral, cultural, ecological. No one forgot what had nearly happened, but no one lived in fear of it anymore. Humanity aged into myth again, not as conquerors or saviors, but as those who stepped back. And that myth was quieter than most. On a forgotten world at the edge of mapped space, a human and an alien sat watching twin suns set. The alien spoke first. "Do you ever regret it?" The human considered the question. "Every day," they said. "And never." The alien tilted their head. "How can both be true?" The human smiled. "That's the kind of answer that keeps the universe from eating us." Far beyond the galaxy, where stars thinned into dark, something vast drifted onward. It remembered, not in words or thought, but in absence. Where once there had been clean patterns to consume, there was now noise that refused to resolve. Life that chose when to be loud, meaning that did not insist on being infinite. The universe adjusted, and in that adjustment, humanity's final gift endured. They did not leave behind weapons. They did not leave behind guardians. They did not leave behind control. They left behind a habit. The habit of stopping. The habit of choosing enough. And because of that, the galaxy did not need a final warning carved into stone or broadcast into the void. It carried the warning within itself. Quiet, messy, alive, and for the first time since intelligence had